game. We had the Jags and Bills game, and for me, second game in London for the Jaguars. It looks like they're starting to piece their offense together a little bit, move the ball pretty well against the Bills. I think you're starting to see those injuries for the Bills really start to pile up, which I do think I mentioned when they lost Terrell Edmonds, how that affected them, Tremaine Edmonds, and then Matt Milano now out with a season-ending injury. So those injuries are starting to pile up for the Bills. For the Jags, they kind of move the ball at will. It's trying to see how they piece things together moving forward. For the Bills, I don't think that those injuries will hurt them against some other teams, especially in the AFC East with some struggling offenses outside of the Dolphins. But for the Jags, relatively encouraging game for me, seeing them move the ball. Kelvin Ridley having some good plays and Travis Etienne having a great game. But for the Bills, came down, kind of a clunky start for both teams, but Jags step in the right direction for them.
Yeah, it's definitely a step in the right direction for the Jags. This is their second game in London, so they definitely had the advantage in this one where the Bills were kind of coming in there, kind of lethargic in the first half, and then you saw Matt Milano get injured, which is definitely a huge blow because he's probably their best player on defense right now, and then you're relying on an older player in Von Miller to really be able to create pressure right now, which I don't think is a good idea for the Bills when you have to rely on him. Didn't really love the signing when it happened, and now that it's kind of coming to fruition, I don't think the Bills will be able to be as dominant on defense without someone like Matt Milano, especially if you want to make a Super Bowl push. I thought this was the year where people are actually starting to be realistic about Josh Allen, where that Bengals game really burned a lot of people, where I sat there in the pregame. I picked the Bengals. I believe you picked the Bengals as well in that playoff game. And then I saw everyone except for Boomer Esiason pick the Bills. And Boomer Esiason played for the Bengals, I believe, right?
He did, yep.
So I saw every single person on that panel who wasn't a former Bengals player go ahead and pick the Bills in the pregame. And I was like, this is not good. Bills get absolutely dominated at home. And then that was really an asterisk where people are starting to be realistic about Josh Allen, especially the first game with 4 turnovers out of the gate. People are really starting to pump the brakes. And so I felt like this was a year, if anything, there wasn't too much pressure on them to really pick them over a team like the Bengals or the Chiefs. And we saw Miami give them trouble in a playoff game without their starting quarterback there. So I think we're starting to see people be realistic. And then without Matt Milano, it's a team that's going to be there, maybe win a playoff game, but I don't think they'll get past the divisional round this year.
No. And then for the Jaguars, another thing about this game that this has been a trouble with the Jaguars all season, and that's just their turnovers. This is a team that if they can play clean football, they're going to be one of the league's best, especially in the AFC. But even in this game, they had 2 turnovers, 2 fumbles. They seem to have a trouble carrying the football. And then with the Bills, I'm in the same sentiment that you are. I don't see them beating a team like the Bengals. I don't see them beating a team, especially the Chiefs. And even a team like the Dolphins with the firepower that they've shown, I just don't see them making it further in the playoffs, especially as these injuries continue to pile up for them.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's definitely fair for the Bills. On the Jaguars side, it's weird because I feel like with Trevor last year, we really saw him thrive when he was down and he had to come back, specifically the Cowboys game and then the Chargers game, where he's someone who's steady and then he almost plays better from behind. Even when they played the Texans, like when Trevor had a sense of urgency versus the Texans, he really started to push the ball, get the offense moving, inevitably threw a turnover in that game where the Texans were able to pick him off. But it's like he seems like a guy who thrives better under adversity, whereas when they have like a 2-score lead, their offense almost looks lethargic and they don't quite know what to do, because in this game they were leading most of the game. The Falcons, they were leading most of that game, and the offense really wasn't pushing it. They seemed like, okay, we can just kind of phone it in on offense. They had some sloppy turnovers, whereas when they're in comeback mode, I feel like that's where they're at their best. So I want to see them be able to lock a team down and then push the momentum where they can actually take the lead, clean up the turnovers where Trevor isn't holding the ball for too long and then fumbling in the pocket like he did in this game versus the Bills, and then they'll be in a much better situation, because in the Texans game, it seemed like everyone was collectively trying to lose that game, where we had a turnover from a receiver, we had a turnover from Trevor Lawrence, and then we had the turnover on the kickoff. So they have some things they need to work out. And I think this game, they definitely benefited from being able to stay over in London. So I just need to see them do it at home, do it on the road, which I think they'll be able to, because they came on the second half. Trevor really started to click after week 8. So hopefully they're a team that thrives in November and December, but still have to see more from the Jaguars consistently.
Yeah, and they have a tough matchup next week against the Colts. We'll talk about that game later in the show, but that'll be a battle of the division, and really kind of will start to form who could prevail in that division moving forward.